In this hand is one of Garmin's top-of-the-line watches. In this hand is probably the best budget entry-level watch you can find, the Garmin Forerunner 165. In this video, we'll be covering the specs for the Garmin Forerunner 165. We'll compare it to the Epix Pro 2, and you will just see just how much Garmin packed into this little watch, which is a quarter of the cost of this watch. And comparatively, they're actually way closer in accuracy to each other than you would expect. So make sure to check the timestamps down below because we'll cover the specs, we'll talk about real world usage, we'll go through the comparison data between the two watches, and then I will actually bring someone on who is an entry-level user of a fitness watch like this, and we will hear from her what her experience is with her very first watch. Now, a quick disclaimer, I bought both of these watches with my own money. Garmin did not send me either of these, and honestly, I don't think Garmin even knows I exist. So the reviews on the Garmin Forerunner 165 is completely our own, and there's no bias to it whatsoever. The Garmin Forerunner 165 is a very small watch. It's 43 millimeters in diameter, and it's only about 11.5 millimeters thick. And it comes in at 39 grams. So it's a very lightweight watch and you don't really even notice it when it's on your wrist, which is really nice for people that don't like big bulky watches. It's made out of plastic, so it doesn't quite have the durability as some of the higher end models, but it does work really well for scratches. It has a 1.2-inch AMOLED display with a 390 by 390 resolution. So it's actually pretty crisp and clear in sunlight. So you don't have to worry too much about being in different lighting conditions and having a hard time seeing the watch. It's got a very flat display. There's a slight bezel on it that might protect it for flat contact if you did drop it or hit it on something, but it is very slight. So if you hit anything at a slight angle, then you're probably going to scratch the glass a little bit. It's water resistant to 5 atmospheres, and it also has the 20 millimeter quick release bands as well, so you can find a lot of different bands to use with it. As you can see, this is not the standard band that comes with it. Now it does use the Gen 4 heart rate sensor, which is what you would find on the 265 model and the 965 models as well, and also on the Fenix 7 and the Epix lines, not the Pro versions. So it is one generation behind on the heart rate sensors, but later on we will compare it to the Gen 5, which is on my Epix Pro 2, and surprisingly, it doesn't seem like it's that much different. You will see later in the video. Now Garmin says this has 11 days worth of battery on a single charge and 4 days if you have all the settings turned on. But in our own real world usage, we charge it about once a week, 6 to 7 days. It lasts 19 hours in GPS only mode and 17 hours with all systems on. Now it does come with a lot of the Garmin wellness features that you get daily. Like all the basic tools that you know from a lot of the Garmin watches. You do get a morning report, you do get a sleep score, you do get body battery and stress reports as well. It does the sleep tracking. It does have HRV tracking, so you do get your HRV status. And it does have your VO2 max race prediction and also recovery advisor on it. Now the Garmin Forerunner 165 comes with about 25 activities built into it, so it's not feature rich on the activity side, but it does cover a lot of your basic activities like your running, your workouts, your biking, walking, and hiking. Now one of the really cool things about this is it does come with a lot of your advanced metrics for your runs. So you do get the metrics like your stride length, your cadence, ground contact time, and even your running power, which is really neat for something so small and on the cheapest end of the Garmin watches. As for maps, this does not come with any maps, but you do get a breadcrumb trail that you could follow back if you need to. It does have an all systems GNS chipset for GPS. It does not have multiband or dual frequency chipset in it, so do keep that in mind. So let's go over and you can see it in some real life scenarios as I go for a couple runs and see it tested against my Garmin Epix Pro 2. All right, I am comparing the Forerunner 165 to my Epix Pro 2 on a run, and it's partially cloudy, and this is a pretty open trail, so GPS track should be pretty even. And actually I clicked on run mode on both watches, and the Forerunner found GPS faster than the Epix did. So I thought that was interesting. So let's go test this out on the trail. Okay, halfway through the run right now. The watches are absolutely identical, which is pretty impressive, to be honest, considering that Epix is, what, 4 times the cost? Usually there's some variations in the heart rate or distance or something, but these have been spot on the entire time. All right, end of the run, and still absolutely identical. Pretty good. So let's go through some of the settings. It actually gives you very similar after run metrics for a quarter of the price. All right, this is the second test of the Forerunner 165 versus the Epix Pro 2. And this is much more of a covered trail, and it's a very cloudy day. So GPS signal should be kind of interesting. And we're gonna go on a longer run as well to see how close these match up. All right, just crossed the 2 mile mark on the Forerunner, but my Epix is at 2.15. So far after 2 miles, about 1/10 of a mile off, which isn't bad. It's still ballpark about the same, but there is a difference compared to a wide open trail on a sunny day. All right, over 4 miles, and the Forerunner 165 hasn't hit the 4 mile mark yet, whereas Epix has. It seems like it's off by about 0.1 miles every 2 miles. So really, for a quarter of the price, that's not that bad. If you're doing long runs like a 20 miler, then you lose out on a mile. All right, 6 miles on the Forerunner, and I'm over a quarter mile further on the Epix. So that definitely changed a little bit. So again, the drift isn't terrible for a watch in this price category. And we're in the tree cover. All right, 9 miles in on the Forerunner, and I'm 9.37 miles in on the Epix. So there is definitely a little GPS drift, but like I said, for a watch in this price category, it did phenomenally well, and it's super lightweight. So as an entry-level watch, so far this has been fantastic. Now you saw the Garmin Forerunner 165 in action when I'm out on a run, and you saw it right there live, the comparison between the two. But let's jump onto the computer and actually show the heart rate data, the GPS tracks, and everything side by side, so you can see how accurate it truly was. All right, I have 2 different activities where I tested the Garmin Forerunner 165 versus the Epix Pro 2, and these are wildly different watches. So basically what I'm looking for is whether the distance and the GPS tracks are pretty similar, and if the heart rate patterns are pretty consistent. Because with the Gen 4 version of the heart rate sensor on the Forerunner 165 and the Gen 5 sensor on the Epix Pro 2, the heart rates should be a little bit different. In theory, the Epix Pro 2 should be more accurate. I do want to see if the ups and the downs within the heart rate is pretty similar. So here we have a GPS track. In orange is the Forerunner, and blue is the Epix Pro 2. So this is a pretty open, wide trail, and you can see that the Forerunner goes off of the trail a little bit more, whereas the Epix stays pretty on track with the trail. But overall, it's a pretty tight GPS track. Got a little bit of variability there. For the duration of the run, it really isn't that off track. And the final distances on the watches were basically the exact same. So on a wide open trail with easy access to the sky and on a sunny blue sky day, the tracks were pretty spot on. Now, if we come down here and we look at the heart rates, like I said, I'm looking for similar patterns in the heart rate. And between the 2 watches, they are almost identical. Actually, very impressively identical considering the price points difference of these 2 watches and that they're different heart rate sensors. So here is a different track. This is a much longer run, and it was in a forested area on a cloudy day with very little access to the sky. And there was more variability in the Forerunner than with the Epix Pro 2. You can see the tracks are offset. The tracks on the Epix are a lot closer to each other. And being a longer run, at the end of the run, the Forerunner was about a quarter mile off compared to the Epix Pro 2, which for this type of distance really is not that bad. So now let's drop down and look at the heart rate. And again, I'm looking for patterns. And overall, the patterns are pretty similar. You can see that the Forerunner definitely started slower to catch up to the heart rate, whereas on the Epix Pro 2, it seems like the heart rate caught up very quickly. But then after that, the heart rate pattern stayed almost identical for the entire duration, which again is very impressive for a watch within this price point. Now that you've seen how the Garmin Forerunner 165 compares to the Epix Pro 2, and how accuracy-wise they're pretty similar, and that's really impressive for a watch that is a quarter of the price. Let's actually talk to someone that's been using this for the last 4 months, who this is her first ever activity tracker, and let's see what she thinks about it. So being your first fitness watch, why didn't you have one before, and what do you think of having one now?
I'm not the best with technology, so I usually kind of avoid things like this, and I thought that it would be really annoying having something on my wrist. But I've been wrong. It's actually really comfortable. I've been really impressed with the sizing of it and how much I'm able to track things that I didn't think I would actually want to track and be interested in.
Such as?
Resting heart rate is a very interesting one for me. Even just seeing how many calories I'm burning, that's super fascinating to me. And I mean, you can even track on here when the sunset is happening, which is nice if you want to run outside and see the sunset, or sunrise. And I have my step counter on my first screen, so it's nice to see how many steps I have, which everyone always talks about with their watches. So I feel included now in being able to count my steps. And I've been really impressed with the battery on this too. I've noticed that when I do backpacking trips and I'm tracking with GPS, it does drain the battery faster, but it still lasts a decent amount of time. And I recently tested this where I didn't use the GPS for over a week, and I'm sitting at 33%. And I haven't charged this in over a week now. So it's pretty impressive that you can go a while with just getting basic stats and it's not going to die on you, which is especially nice if you're flying and you just don't have a chance to charge it. Yeah, there's all sorts of things that I track on here that I've been really impressed with. Sleep too. Sleep is very important to me. And being able to see how many hours I actually am sleeping and having it track when I take a nap, which isn't super often, but it's nice to know when it's tracking my nap too.
So when you wake up in the morning, what's the first thing you do?
I always check the morning report. It's just interesting to know like how your night of sleep was and tells you your HRV status and gets me set and ready for my day. I can even check my body battery and see just how much I've recharged for the day and what my stress levels are at currently when I've woken up and what they look like throughout the day.
Now, battery life, when we are tracking GPS on longer backpacking trips, like a 3-day weekend, typically it dies like 2.5 days in, so we do have to bring the charger with us for that. Whereas a watch like this makes it through something like that totally fine. But that's one of the downsides of having a smaller watch and a smaller battery. But it's really not that hard to have a charger with you and charge it back up if you are doing longer trips anyways.
Especially if you're going to be bringing a small power bank. Totally makes sense to just throw it on the charger at night.
Now, after having this watch, do you regret having one?
No, I don't. I actually think it's forcing me to use technology a little bit more. But what it's really forcing me to do is get to know my body better. And that's really important to me, especially based on Brian and I's background with nutrition and yoga and just being really active. there's a lot of specs about my body that I just wasn't keeping track of that are really important for me to know, especially the older I get. And I just entered a new decade this year, so it's nice to know these things.
So once again, this is a Garmin Forerunner 165. There are links down in the description below if you want to support the channel. It doesn't cost you anything extra. And if you enjoyed this video, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and we will see you in the next one. This here is Garmin's top of the line watch.
Cat approved.
It is cat approved. Even cats really love the Epix Pro too. What do you think? Great? Oh yeah, best thing ever. So dumb.